The Richard Roeper Show is brought to you by AmericanEagle.com Studios. The digital landscape is changing rapidly, and to compete in today's online business environment, you need an experienced partner. Since 1995, AmericanEagle.com has partnered with companies of all sizes, offering web design, web development, e-commerce, mobile apps, and digital marketing to drive your overall business's success, because they believe that today's online world is your online opportunity. Visit AmericanEagle.com to get started today, AmericanEagle.com. Okay, welcome to the podcast, everybody. So much going on in the world of pop culture and entertainment and movies and TV and all of that stuff. I want to get right into it. I want to talk about a couple of things that have gone viral, as they say, and sparked huge discussion and debate. The first is the Blue Origin, the flight to space, soaring to the heavens. Gayle King, Katy Perry, she kissed the sky and she liked it. Lauren Sanchez. So this group of women, as you all know, I'm sure by now, they did this fantastic adventure / publicity stunt / ego trip. And listen, they went to space. That's pretty cool. I get that. But there was a lot of backlash about this from people saying, you know, this is so tone deaf, and this is all just about me. And even in the celebrity community, a few fellow celebrities saying this is grotesque and this is grimy and this is tone deaf. So they went up in space, this group of women in their cool blue spacesuits in this interestingly shaped vehicle, right? And they're saying that, hey, this is all about inspiring young girls and young women and all the things that this company can do, and rocket all the garbage up into space and environmental this and da-da-da-da-da. And space has always been about exploration and experiments in science, and okay. But, when they start calling themselves astronauts, and I know in the current vernacular, a lot of times people say, well, you're an astronaut if you've gone, it's 62 miles you have to go to be where it's, the official state border. They have never built a wall up there yet. But I think there's a little bit of a difference between like John Glenn and the right stuff people. But wait, before we get into all that, I want to play you this clip of Gayle King. She clapped back as they say, she clapped back at her critics. And this, I believe, is Entertainment Tonight. So I want you to hear what Gayle King has to say here.
This is what bothers me, because I've certainly read some of the things online coming from people that I know, that I like, that I consider friends. And this is what I would say to that. Space is not an either or. It's a both and. And because you do something in space doesn't mean you're taking anything away from Earth. And what you're doing in space is trying to make things better here on Earth. What Blue Origin wants to do is take the waste here and figure out a way to put it in space to make our planet cleaner. I mean, Jeff Bezos has so many ideas, and the people that are working there are really devoted and dedicated to making our planet a better place. That's number one. Number two, have you been? Have you been? If you've been and you still feel that way after you come back, please let's have a conversation. Number three, please don't call it a ride. That is not a friggin' ride. Whenever a man goes up, you have never said to an astronaut, boy, what a ride. We duplicated the same trajectory that Alan Shepard did back in the day, pretty much. No one called that a ride. It was called a flight. It was called a journey, because a ride implies that it's something frivolous or something that's lighthearted. There was nothing frivolous about what we did and the machine that we were on, and what it took for the people to get that machine up and running, to get us up and get us back down safely. So, I'm very disappointed and very saddened by it. And I also say this, what it's doing to inspire other women and young girls, please don't ignore that. I've had so many women and young girls reach out to me, and men too, by the way, that say, wow, I never thought I could do that, but I see you doing it at this stage of my life. Who would have thunk it? Not me. And how inspired they are.
Okay. There's a lot to unpack there. First of all, I really like and admire Gayle King. I think she's a very talented broadcaster. I know she's a good person. Everybody talks about, she's best friends with Oprah. Of course, Oprah was there tearing up watching this. And she's an accomplished broadcaster in her own right. And I think she has the best intentions. But that was one of the worst clapbacks, if you will, responses to criticism I've seen in the history of history. When you say, have you been to space like me? That is such a 0.001% thing to say, because of course not, because whether or not, now my guess is this was all sponsored, but it's really expensive when they talk about passengers, hitching, and that's cool if you're rich and you want to do that. It's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, at least, I think. It's not going to be, $4,600 to go into space. So to say, have you been, is so condescending. And then to invoke the name of Alan Shepard to say, well, and they kind of duplicated what she's talking about. What Gayle King is talking about is in 1961, Alan Shepard, who is a World War II veteran, a test pilot, a naval aviator, a man of science who had been trained for years for this. In 1961, he was in charge of the first flight that sent an American into space. This was in 1961. That was the Freedom 7, they called that aircraft. He was part of the Mercury, the group you see in the great movie, The Right Stuff, right? First American and second person in history to travel to space. And they kind of duplicated his flight. But, Alan Shepard logged thousands of hours in space and eventually actually became, I believe, the fifth person to walk on the moon. He's actually famously, and listen, this is a fun and lighthearted thing too, but it's in the middle of, groundbreaking, world-shattering, game-changing space travel. He hit a couple of golf drives, remember that golf shots you see in the old footage, I'm sure. Served in the Navy, all kinds of developed high-altitude aircraft. He was an astronaut. 11 minutes hitching a ride and going just those, 62 miles that you need to get to even invoke his name. And then, well, they didn't say those guys took a ride. That's because they were in charge of the ride. Jesus. To breach the line that marks the start of outer space. It's sort of an internationally recognized line. You have to go 100 kilometers. That's 62 miles, okay? To travel to the moon, it's a little longer. It's 384,399 kilometers, 238,854 miles. The moon is so far away that there's still a group of probably 10% of the world's population who just can't wrap their minds around the fact that man made it to the moon. That they know that moon up in that sky that I see, and that's how those conspiracy theories are born. But, to me, everything Gayle King said there was just wrong. And I'm surprised by someone who's so savvy and who's been on both sides of the press for so much of her life. I think if they just said from the start, listen, we're privileged, we're lucky, we have the means and the celebrity, and yes, this is basically a glorified advertisement, but we believe in what this company's doing, and let's go on a tour. And when she comes back, if there was criticism, she should sort of said, listen, I'm not an astronaut, I'm not a scientist, I'm Gayle King. And I got a chance to do this, and it was scary because she was, and I give her a lot of credit, not everybody would do that. And just say, listen, I get it. We didn't need to be tone deaf or be ignoring the world's problems, but we think this is a great thing that this company's doing, and we took advantage of our privileged place in life to have this great ride. Seems kind of basic. Or here's another idea. If the women who were chosen for that, however they got the access, Lauren Sanchez, whatever the case may be, if each one of them had sponsored, because they kept saying this is to inspire young girls, to inspire women to get into, and listen, we've had female astronauts for a long time, true heroes and pioneers. But if they had said, we just want to inspire the next generation, and each one of them had sponsored let's say a high school student, an honors student, somebody that may never have the privilege, who's coming from a tough background, or college or graduate students or young scientists, women who are already making great strides and dream of one day, going into space, and say, we're going to send them up into space and they can come back and tell us about it. And we're going to be on the ground cheering for them. That would have been cool. I know there's some people out there saying, oh, relax with the criticism. But when you go on the Reddit and the Twitter and all the platforms and even in the mainstream media, I don't think these faux astronauts saw this coming because they're insulated and because nobody around them, I guess, said, you might want to think about, as they say these days, the optics of this. So, and that response is just, have you been? And, get back to me when you've done your due diligence. And invoking Alan Shepard is just, wow. Okay, another story back on Earth that has generated a ton of discussion. Did you hear about this brave Sideline reporter who was interviewing two women in the crowd at the Rogers Center in Toronto. And I think he was trying to convert them to being Braves fans. That was the idea, because this is in Blue Jays home territory. So what's this guy's name? Wiley Ballard. Sounds like somebody could do a country song, The Ballad of Wiley Ballard. So he's interviewing two women. By the way, the way he's described here in the story I have is he's a FanDuel reporter. That's one of the gambling websites. So he's with the legendary legacy media organization known as the FanDuel Network. So let's take a listen to this. Now, keep in mind, I know a lot of you have probably seen this clip, while this is going on, and all the teams do it in all the sports now. They have the sideline reporters, and a lot of times they go into the crowd. They'll interview the fan who made the great catch or knocked over his nachos, and they also do the things with the coaches and the players and all that kind of stuff. So this is while the game is going on, and during this conversation, there was a base hit to left that I don't think they even mentioned. So let's just take a listen to this.
A lot of fun up here up the Corona rooftop. Who do we got here? What's your name?
My name's Lauren.
Lawrence, all right.
And I'm Kayla.
Kayla, and you guys hang out at the rooftop lounge often?
Once a year I come out to visit.
Okay, well, we timed it pretty well. All right, good. How are you guys feeling about rooting for the Braves today?
Oof, I don't know. I'm hoping for the best.
What about you? Are you a Braves fan now?
Not quite.
Not quite. All right, I'm gonna go to work up here, guys. Good luck the rest of the way.
Okay, Wiley. You got 4 innings to get the numbers.
I'm on it.
Get us some more Braves fans.
All right, so they want me to get your number.
They want you to get my number.
I'm dead serious. They're saying in my ear right now. She didn't believe me because she thinks you guys are not. I'm making this up. Even if you guys weren't, I might use that in the future. That's actually a pretty good move.
This is unbelievable.
So the best part of this right now is that Wiley could totally be faking it. This might be the new move. You just walk around with a FanDuel microphone and an earpiece in and convince fans that they're actually on TV.
I should have thought of this years ago.
I am speechless.
Okay, that was a little unusual, that's for sure. This is a little more interesting because I think there's a bigger divide here, more of a debate than the launch into space. Because at first, and definitely from the men out there, a lot of people were like, bro got his game. And the dude, that guy, Wiley Ballard, the Ballad of Wiley Ballard, he posted a meme of the how you like them apples number, from Goodwill Hunting, when Will gets the phone number from Minnie Driver and then says, you like apples.
How do you like them apples?
So he's having a lot of fun because he got the number. That's pretty clever, actually, to post the thing from Goodwill Hunting. And a lot of people were saying, oh, my bro's got game and, should have thought of this myself. And it's just fun. And, she could have said no, although, these two women are up there, they're kind of in this odd position. But then there were a lot of sports reporters, many of them women, who really expressed their disdain and disgust for this. CBS MLB editor Katie Feldman said, this is one of the most insanely inappropriate things I've ever seen. I legitimately cannot believe it's real. Washington Post sports reporter Chelsea Janes, imagine if a female reporter did anything like this. Career over. Pretty brutal to see it glorified by the broadcast. And then Grant Hill probably would have had something to say about this. But this is Dallas Morning News baseball reporter Evan Grant said, the situation shows it's still not the same for both sexes. The incident was inherently wrong. If a female sideline dugout reporter did this, she'd be called horrible names and probably be run out of town. Detroit CBS sports reporter Rachel Hopmeyer said a woman could never and would never do this without losing their job. Lazy, disappointing, offensive, grimy. I could go on. Yikes all around. So I have to say in this case first, I did think, God, that's really strange. But as a dude, as a guy, I didn't immediately think about how inappropriate that really was. And all of these sports reporters and many, many more in various jobs, whether it's print or broadcast, but especially women who have similar jobs say, can you imagine if I was in the stands and I tried to get the number of a guy? And yeah, the truth is they're right. It's still a double standard. And we have, great female broadcasters, play-by-play, commentary, sideline reporters. They do great work. That is beyond any kind of discussion. I know there's like a 5% Neanderthal population out there that still doesn't want to hear women broadcasting. They probably don't want them to go into space either. But that's just you're just a fucking idiot at this point. If that's how you feel about things and your thinking is flat out wrong. But yeah, and the guys in the booth encouraging this dude and ignoring the game. It just got when you listen to it again, you're like, yeah, that's a bad move, man. And, we're also living in an age where he's got a FanDuel microphone and we're promoting gambling. And I'm all for that, as you know, because I'm on those websites and I go to FanDuel once in a while. But we live in such a different age. And, I know that a lot of these quick sideline chats, especially when you're talking to the coach between quarters at an NBA game or the NCAA football games and the coach is running off the field, they have to do it. They're contractually obligated and they have nothing to say. They just want to get out of there. Every once in a while, someone says something funny, but I get a kick out of all that. And I like when the reporters in that little the camera there, and a foul ball comes close, and they can have a lot of fun back and forth about the ballpark food or, this player's hobbies. And I like all that kind of color commentary, all that things that adds humanity and interest. I love when they show the WNBA players coming to the draft all, dressed to the nines, or NBA players and they're, all decked out, which is a relatively new things. Players, these way back in the day, they'd wear like a shirt and tie, but now you get all these great, I love all that stuff. But yeah, this guy, it's a bad idea. And it does prove that there still is a double standard. Where there is not a double standard is that this is a segue, where we all agree that Portillo's is the best. By the way, Portillo's now in some of the Chicago area locations adding a temporary experimental breakfast menu, including there's like a chocolate cake donut and all kinds of other stuff. I'm going to get that whole menu coming up soon, but let's talk a little bit about Portillo's. All right, kids, let's talk about Portillo's. It's one of my favorite places to eat on the planet Earth. My delivery history will bear this out. I also happen to live within walking distance of one of the Chicago Portillo's. Yes, that's right. I'm that lucky. It is amazing. You could order from the restaurant or the drive-thru, but if it's not near you, you can go to portillos.com, and order. They got French fries. They got all kinds of comfort food. The amazing hot dogs, the Italian beef, the Italian sausage, some really good salads, by the way, if you want to take it a little bit easy, because you want to have a little bit room left for the chocolate cake, the best chocolate cake in the world. Think about it. Portillos.com, Portillos.com. That's how you spell it, Portillos.com. All right, welcome back to the podcast. I am your trusty podcaster, Richard Roeper. Other entertainment news this week. Sad news. This is almost every week we lose somebody in the world of show business, and it's this time it's Wink Martindale, the legendary game show host. But Wink had a good run, dead at 91. The Los Angeles Times reported. Wink Martindale, the king of the television game show, who hosted Tic-Tac-Dough, Gambit, High Rollers, and a slew of other programs, died Tuesday in Rancho Mirage. He was 91. Martindale was also a longtime voice of Los Angeles radio. Died surrounded by family and his wife of 49 years, Sandra Martindale. So, sad, of course, but also lovely and touching to find out that, that he was with family and his wife of nearly a half century. It's interesting. A lot of the game show hosts, especially from back in the day, were radio personalities, especially in Los Angeles. And then they'd make that segue into hosting game shows. So I'm just going through the LA Times obituary. So he had 2 local game shows in LA, and then he went national with What's This Song? And then all kinds he was either the host or the producer of 21 game shows, Words and Music, Trivial Pursuit, The Last Word, and Debt. But Tic-Tac-Toe, I think, was the main thing. That was a lot of these game shows now, they're in their like third iterations because they were around like in the way back in the early days. It was one of the first things when television was invented, would they do game shows, because it's kind of simple visually, and you have just one set and you can crank them out and people can play at home. So Tic-Tac-Toe, he was on the show he was on CBS and then was in syndication for a long, long time. And then did a lot of other things and was always kind of recently, they had Wink Martindale doing some crazy reads for the Howard Stern show. And at first I thought it had to be like an impersonator, but apparently it was really Wink saying things that he never would have said before. So 91, and this got me thinking about the whole profession of game show host. and how it's evolved over the years. Because there was a time when I was growing up, and listen, I was never a big game show guy. I still to this day kind of associate game shows with hospital waiting rooms or nursing homes, or, you're home sick, or people that just have the TV on all day. And if that's your thing, that's your thing. But I don't know that it just was never, I like the Gong Show. Remember Chuck Barris, the Gong Show? And then they made a movie out of that. And, Jeopardy, I know people who are addicted to Jeopardy, and I am not one of those. Once in a while, it's a fun show. And people, the last time I was an answer on Jeopardy a couple of times, and I always hear from a bunch of people. And I'm like, okay, these aren't my friends who watch Jeopardy. And more humble brag, that's not even a brag. I was a clue in the New York Times crossword puzzle a couple of weeks ago. Same thing. I heard from all my smart friends. It said, hey, you're 51 across. But the game show host, in recent years, we've lost three legends for sure. Wink Martindale. Now, back in 2023, not 1923. That's a television show, but there were no game shows then, at least not on television. The great Bob Barker died in 2023 at the age of 99. Of course, he was most well known for The Price is Right. He did that for like 25 years, more than that, I think. And then Truth or Consequences before that. And, famously got into a big fight in a movie. Remember that?
The price is wrong, bitch.
I think you've had enough. No? Now you've had enough. Bitch.
And was a very famous animal rights activist. Bob Barker, 99. And then just last year, Peter Marshall, of course, best known for the Hollywood Squares from 66 to 81. And he also was an actor and singer, did Broadway and TV, a little bit different than a lot of the backgrounds for these. But Peter Marshall died last year. He was 98. So Wink Martindale, 91. Peter Marshall, 98. Bob Barker, 99. Tom Kennedy, I believe, was in his 90s, another game show host. And it's interesting how it's evolved, as I mentioned, because these guys were game show hosts. And, if you look at the photos and Gene Rayburn, member of the Match Game, it was a little bit bawdy. They all, especially like in the 60s and 70s, they all kind of took on that Dean Martin, that thing where you couldn't dress like your hippie kids, but you were still trying to be mod. So they'd have like wild, flashy suits with crazy colors and huge lapels and bell-bottom slacks and big tinted sunglasses, the kind of the Burt Reynolds model. And I always describe these guys, they're always a little bit, Richard Dawson, of course, with Family Feud, and he was very leering and they're always a little bit salacious and a little bit bawdy, as much as you could be on like daytime network television. And I always described him as that one flashy uncle you had that would come into town every once in a while, lived out of town and had a Cadillac dealership in Tulsa or Jupiter, Florida or something. And he'd come into town and he'd have a pinky ring and he'd always be mixing martinis. And, your dad would always be like, oh, going back. Or, that one uncle that kind of the life of the party and all the teen kids, we'd think, hey, not that I had an uncle like this, but I knew people who did, because they'd be like, yeah, you're 16. You can have a drink. Come on. They all kind of had that persona of the fun uncle when they were game shows. And we just saw this with Pat Sajak and who just retired. Basically, he's going to come back, I think, and do Celebrity Wheel of Fortune. But it is the greatest gig in the world because, Drew Carey has talked about this, who took over right on The Price is Right. You can tape like 5 shows in a day, sometimes even more. You crank them out. You change outfits. You bring in new contestants. It has a very easy formula. It's very light lifting for these pros who do it. Maybe even more than 5. And I know Vanna White said at one point, I think she was working about 30 days for the year, that in 30 days you could get a year's worth of shows. And they bank them, they put them in the can, and everybody who's on those shows has to sign, non-disclosure forms. Actually, a lot of these shows that, especially like contestant shows, Survivor, Bachelor, Shark Tank, they're all taped. We know this, even, something. And a lot of these shows actually have, I guess, like, human behavior experts or psychologists or who actually sit down and help people keep secrets, tell them the way they can avoid telling people and blurting something out the wrong way. So, but for the host, man, you get paid a lot of money. It's a great gig. That might explain why there's such longevity for a lot of these game show hosts. You know, they did their jobs and they did it well, but it's a nice gig. And these days, though, it's interesting because back in the day, it was like you were a game show host. I mentioned Peter Marshall had done some Broadway, and I know he was a singer, and you would get that occasionally. And Richard Dawson was an actor who had been on Hogan's Heroes and some other things. But in most cases, they were radio and local TV hosts who became game show hosts. So that was kind of what they aspired to. And now, Drew Carey taking over The Price is Right is something like back in the day, you know, you wouldn't have seen that. You wouldn't have seen, you wouldn't have seen Carol O'Connor from All in the Family doing a game show because people say, what happened to his career? But that stigma's gone now, I guess. Jane Lynch, my fellow Thornridge High student, my friend, who has Emmys and all kinds of awards and is a great actress and could do everything. She did that Hollywood Game Night, right? And Alec Baldwin, remember Alec Baldwin did the Match Game before things happened with him and they decided that was Alec Baldwin is like, and listen, he's doing the reality show now too, Meet the Baldwins, which I reviewed, but lost interest in after about 3 episodes. But, you know, he's a great actor and he's done, you know, stage work and great TV work and Emmys and, you know, great movie star and great character actor. And then he's doing the Match Game. Neil Patrick Harris did a game show. He's a Broadway great. Elizabeth Banks, even Anthony Anderson, all these people who have really good, solid careers as actors all have taken on game shows. It's just changed. You know, the stigma is no longer there. I once did, this is now got to be about 10 years ago, I was asked to host a pilot for a game show. I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically, it was going to be kind of a mix between a Trivial Pursuit and a Jeopardy, but it was going to be all pop culture. And I'll tell you something, it didn't work. I don't think I was probably the right person for the job, but it was really ambitious because I was going to be the host. We went to this building, I think in Culver City. They had like 250 people there because we taped 2 or 3 shows. They had contestants. None of this ever saw the light of day. They had a DJ who was part of the show. I'd say, okay, DJ Phil, you know, he'd play a soundtrack of a song from a movie or something. And then they had a reporter in the audience who was great. So she would talk to people almost like the fan reporters and sports things. And they built a set and they had like NFL truck size cameras, you know, the NFL trucks like they do, or for golf tournaments where there's like, I don't know how many cameras, the big jibs and the sweeping thing and makeup and hair. And they bought me wardrobe. I think we did 2 shows and that took a long time because it was a pilot and we were, you know, trying things out. And I can't imagine what that cost production people. I don't want to say it was a major production company, and to bring in the audience and to feed everybody and the crew and everything. I could tell about halfway through the first pilot that it was just, there was too much going on. They brought in different types of contestants, and that's a key to all these shows too, obviously, right? You need those bubbly, crazy contestants, and they were great. I was not great. I was okay, but it just, you know, I don't think the game show DNA, but we did it. And then they showed it to test audiences. And then, I don't know, they ran it by executives. And then they said, thank you for stopping by. I mean, I got paid for it, but I was like, you know, I can't imagine how many of those there are that never even make it. We know this about sitcom pilots and we know this about dramatic pilots where people, you know, remember in Pulp Fiction, Uma Thurman's character had done the one pilot that never got picked up. But yeah, that was the one time I was asked one other time to audition for a game show. And I said, you know, not for me. And I'm not for that. So I have all great respect for the late, great Wink Martindale and Bob Barker and everybody else who's done it. There's all kinds of different skills out there. And I think game show hosts would be the first ones to tell you that it ain't Broadway. It sure ain't manual labor, but you got to be good and people got to like you for a long time. And God bless them all. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the podcast. We will be back next week with some fresh material for you. No game show talk.